All right, today we're going to be talking about overcrowding in a New York City context. It's not a laughing matter as it is on a certain TV sitcom that's just been revived. So from overcrowding, our first slide here, just how crowded is New York City? Well, we can tell you from 2005 to 2013, the number of studio apartments in the city increased by 45%. But this is the interesting part. The number with 3 or more people living in said studio apartments, one room, jumped by 579%. It's an interesting cause and effect thing because while more people needed apartments, large apartments weren't being built. They ended up living in studios. Moving on. How crowded is New York City? We continue to ask. Well, the median rent paid by people living in crowded apartments grew nearly 5 times faster than their median incomes. When you're looking at this 2.7% number, that's the bump in income, while 12.8% was the amount of rent being paid. So people are making less money to live in more crowded apartments. Got another number for you right here. Young adults and college students, while still a significant population in crowded dwellings, are not primarily the catalyst for crowded living in New York City. Just going to show you one more thing now. More than 4 out of 5 crowded households and 2/3 of the severely crowded households include folks who are children. Only 30% of the city households include kids. I've got one more slide that I'm going to share with you now. Among the 5 boroughs, the Bronx saw the highest percentage of crowded households with 12.4%, followed by our home borough of Brooklyn with 10.3%. As a matter of fact, 5 neighborhoods in Brooklyn sort of top the list of being crowded, with Manhattan Beach and Gerritsen Beach being the number 1 and 2 spots. So Scott Stringer, the city comptroller, compiled these numbers in an exhaustive report, and our friend Jarrett Murphy and the folks at City Limits help us digest them. So thank you to them. And now here's Greg with the A Block.
There you have it. NYC apartments are overcrowded, and given our intensifying housing crisis, it seems like it could get worse. Here to discuss the root causes of this problem and how the administration's housing plan will try to solve it, or if they're trying at all, are Karen Haycox, CEO at Habitat for Humanity NYC. Karen, thank you so much for being on BK Live.
Thank you for having us.
And from the Pratt Center for Community Development, Executive Director Adam Friedman. Adam, thank you very much for being on BK Live. Thank you both for spending time with us here today on BK Live. You know, we want to talk about the problems, we want to talk about the definitions of crowded, but first I'd like to get into what specifically your organizations do briefly here in New York. Habitat for Humanity is obviously an organization that's close to many Americans' hearts. What is your purpose behind Habitat NYC?
Basically, at Habitat for Humanity, we believe in affordable home ownership. We believe in the fundamental benefits that home ownership and a family having in their home is the impetus really for success long term. We also believe in engaging with our partners to enable them to participate in the housing work that we do. We like to sort of put forward a hand up, not a handout, when it comes to housing.
So Adam, over at Pratt, you guys are building things and showing us a better way to live our lives in the city.
We're not building things ourselves.
Building ideas.
We're helping others
yes, to build smarter. But I was sort of blown away by the parameters for being crowded versus overcrowded. So technically, Greg and I living in our studio apartment, we're in a crowded household.
Right. By choice?
I'm just saying the parameters. So if two
right. Well, one of the things in Scott's study, and hats off to Scott Stringer, the controller, for taking this on. This is an incredibly challenging, thorny, difficult political issue. What it showed was there's overcrowding across the board at every income level, gender, educational attainment. It's obviously much more severe in low-income communities, though.
Right. So the question then is, if it's so pervasive and people aren't even aware even that they're living in an overcrowded situation or a crowded situation, if there are 2 people sharing a studio apartment, what's the tipping point? When does it become sort of untenable where it can have public health ramifications?
Well, for me, it's about choice. I think when we specifically focus on families that are making between 50 to 80% of the average median income. So, as an example, in Brooklyn, that's for a family of 4 between $40-ish and $73,000 for a family of 4. And so, for me, it's about choices. If you have no choice in order to house your family, but to take in, to live in an unsafe physical condition or an unsafe series of crowded roommates, then I think that's, for me, the fundamental challenge that we face is if you elect to live together in a studio apartment for affordability, that's different than being forced into an unsafe or unhealthy environment.
Gotcha.
What are some of the other factors fueling this incredible overcrowding in New York City?
Well, look, this is a long-term phenomenon. This is a long-term in the making.
Of course.
And at the bottom of it, at the root of it, is the complete abdication of the federal government, moving out of housing. And what this shows, what the study shows, is the tremendous gap in the income that people have and need to sustain a decent quality housing in New York City. So there's that. But then there's all sorts of other failures combined in this, which is we need to make every neighborhood in the city livable and attractive. We need good bus rapid transit. We need good schools. We need safety in every neighborhood so that they're all safe for housing development and for people to live in.
So in the New York context, like you talked about, it's been sort of a long-term thing from this sort of romantic notion people have of tenements and coming to America and making it, to your ideas about the notion of choice. And like, if you want to live 5 roommates when you get out of college and you guys are grinding, that's one thing, but a family being forced to live that way is another. How are we answering these problems in a New York lens? It's different than like building houses in Georgia where there's land and space.
Well, I think, we applaud certainly the city's focus on affordable housing as an issue. And I think for us, the focus needs to think long-term about what are the implications of focusing only on one aspect of the solutions. I always want to answer that question with a question. Imagine the New York of the future if home ownership, for instance, is the only entitled to the privileged few. This is a city that was built on home ownership.
I always think of us as renters. Aren't we a city of renters?
I think that's a more, perhaps my colleague here could give us more statistic response, but I think emotionally, I think when you think of Queens, when you think of the Bronx to some degree, I think when you think of people coming to America, coming to New York City, the American dream is about home ownership. And that was very much the backs upon which I think that's what we aspire to. Yeah. Again, it's not the only solution. It's certainly the drum we beat. It's the solution we believe in. And we just think there needs to be heightened attention to it.
But Adam, even like my neighbors are moving to somewhere far out in Queens because they were here, they did their Brooklyn thing, and then they bought a house in Queens. So are we increasingly becoming this sort of transitory city where if you're here, you're renting and you're saving away to buy something that you could afford? Because $500,000 for a studio apartment that you're lucky to find
seems a bit much.
Yeah.
Right?
Seems a bit much when you look at anywhere else in the world and you're like, I could have a backyard for $350.
I think we've always been a city of renters, and in terms of where we should go with that, and the sort of the hybrid or the on the continuum between rental and ownership, there are other models that involve nonprofit ownership, that involve land trusts, where people have a stake, they're vested in their communities, but when they sell, it has to go back to the community so that it's preserved for affordable housing. And I think that's the model we have to head in. But to go back to your question, the mayor has come up with an incredibly ambitious housing strategy. The issue is, does it go deep enough? Does it address the people most in need that Scott Stringer brought forward in his report? And the answer is probably not. And that's because it's still largely too market-driven. We have to reach much lower into the other economic classes.
What are the effects of the different levels of overcrowding here in Brooklyn? I mean, I know everywhere we're overcrowded, as the numbers show, but it feels like, on 4th Avenue and Park Slope, they're building huge skyrises so that thousands more people can come to that neighborhood. What are the effects on the different neighborhoods that this has in terms of how we're going to find a solution to this overcrowding?
Well, it depends. Are you moving in or are you moving out?
I want to move out.
I think the people who are already there feel a lot of insecurity and there's a lot of stress. because of the question that you sort of started with, you know, and saying, is it a matter of choice? And they don't feel it's choice. And, you know, change is innately difficult. You know, we're all New Yorkers. We're in a way vested in change. You know, we're here because we want change. You know, we're all entrepreneurs, we're immigrants, we're strivers, and yet there's something innately built into us that makes change difficult. And the people seeing their neighborhood change all around them, you know, that's a very stressful feeling.
So
you
looking
know?
at the top 5 neighborhoods, most of them are in South Brooklyn in our context. Manhattan Beach, Garrettson Beach, Sheepshead Bay, Bath Beach, and Bensonhurst. Now, these have traditionally been sort of bedroom communities. They're not what you think of when you think of those towers going up and all of these things. So why do you think these guys are on the list for being so overcrowded? It's not exactly like Williamsburg and all of the Bed-Stuy or hot spots for gentrification.
It's too bad we don't have access to a map here.
Yeah.
But if you drew those communities on a map, you'd see that band for people being pushed further and further out from the core of the city.
So you think it's more of a pushing out instead of a settling in? Because there is, like in Queens, a context for people who are just arriving, and you have, hey, I live with my uncle and my cousin and everybody because we're just getting here. But these are people who you think might just be displaced from other areas.
Could be. I'm sorry, I don't personally know a lot about those specific areas, but I wonder, an understudied aspect of this might be the impact of lack of affordable home ownership on putting an additional strain on the rental market in some degree, because people are more transitory versus staying in. I think there's also an informal source of affordable housing by people who own homes and put in affordable studio rentals in their basement. So thereby adding to the rental stock. But I think it's an understudied theory. It's just something we discuss at our coffee clatches in the morning.
Yeah.
Let's talk about solutions. What, if any, solutions are the city working on, the mayor working on to kind of, you know, solve this problem of overcrowding? I think it's something that's kind of just, you know, taken at face value. Living in New York, it's going to be crowded. But I also think it's reaching, like, you know, unprecedented levels. What's going to be done about it?
Well, we applaud the city's investment in the NIHOP program, New Infill Housing Opportunity Program. We're looking for strategies that are going to help us in other ways. The Community Land Trust conversation, again, this is really a critical quiver in our, or arrow in our quiver, if you will. And we also look at down payment assistance. We're looking for additional down payment assistance that will help in, again, our drumbeat is affordable home ownership. So we're looking at those kinds of strategies that will help us long term, and we believe help the city long term. I also think that home ownership, again, certainly helps the family, but I think it strengthens the neighborhoods. Again, I'll ask a question. What does the city of New York look like in 15 or 20 years if it's only the entitled few who have anchors and who are connected to the communities? And what, again, does that community of renters, or specifically in our target area, 50 to 80%, what is the next generation that we're breeding if they have no equity, if they have no investment to take themselves into their old age or the next chapter of their lives?
I'm afraid we're actually going to find out in real life. That seems to be the trajectory. So looking at some of the real life ramifications of this, I have a really interesting stat from the study that showed that crowded conditions have been shown to have negative cognitive and behavioral development impacts on children, because they really can't even sleep when they're in environments where there's just a lot of people living a lot of different lives. Are there any other sort of real life ramifications that we can pull from this?
I would suggest, I mean, we have anecdotal evidence around our families, again, when you put them in simple, decent, affordable housing, how their performance metrics go up in schools, that their parents get more stably or over additional jobs. They're traditionally underemployed. Yeah. They access 911 services less frequently. So for me, I think about the impact on physical safety of inappropriate or inadequate structures. Right. I think about personal safety. When you are living in an overcrowded situation, perhaps with people that you don't know, you may be living with someone that you may not choose to share your house with.
I would take it up a level. You know, that's the impact on the individual, but you need to also think about the impact on the community and community overcrowding, or the schools overcrowding, or the schools deteriorating, while there's, you know, crime, you know, there's safety issues associated with that. And to go back to some of the point about, so what is to be done here? The mayor has this housing agenda. we would argue it has to go deeper to really reach the severely overcrowded. The point you just made about, well, some people are building out their basements as rental units. Data is notoriously difficult to get here, but there's well over 130,000 accessory dwelling units. And very early on, the mayor committed to looking for strategies to legalize them, to upgrade and legalize them. And one study done by Chaya in Queens suggested that as many as a third of these could be legalized. So there's a whole menu of things that have to be done.
Right.
So in our final moments, I want to give you both a chance to talk about what solutions you might be working on and what goes on at your different organizations. Adam, why don't we start with you? What can you tell us about the Pratt Center?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things. One, there's engagement around the mayor's agenda for affordable housing and trying to push it deeper so it reaches more of the neediest people. Second, we're very engaged around bus rapid transit and trying to figure out how to link the communities better together so that people who are looking for a job can actually get to the employment centers. You know, the other thing that I think I would mention here is there's a tremendous amount of unbuilt density in communities throughout the city. So rather than try and rezone existing areas, we have to look at what's already been upzoned and figure out why isn't that being built. The mayor's proposal focuses on a discrete number of communities, and there's a tremendous amount of resistance that's led to. We need to look at more of a citywide approach to what's not being done.
And I would say with Habitat for Humanity, we're focused on community land trusts, really the issue of affordability and perpetuity. It costs the same to build a rental dwelling as it does to build a home ownership opportunity, and we believe that obviously it serves families in different better ways. I think that we're looking at strategies to increase investment in home ownership opportunities, down payment assistance, and we're partnering with our other actors in the sector. We're part of a coalition for affordable homes, which will help this. And then I guess last and not least, Habitat is an engagement strategy. So we would encourage people to become engaged in their community. This is a unique opportunity to participate in the housing sector, unlike potentially any other organization in the group in the area.
Well, Karen, Adam, thank you very much for being here. The work you do is so valuable, and we appreciate your valuable time being here on BK Live. Great job. Please come back again sometime, would you?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.